Welcome. I won't get so close to the microphone. Thank you for coming to the Mississippi Book Festival. This is something, if you've not been, that our state does very, very well. This is our 10th or 11th year out here. And thanks for coming to the first of what will be 2 Jacktown USA panels. I'm here for the next hour with you, and my friend and co-author Camille King will be here at 1:30 in the afternoon, same location, and you're going to thoroughly enjoy it. We got a full day for you. After each panel, there will be a book signing in the down on the Capitol grounds under the big tent from 11 to 11:30, and then after Camille's panel between 3 and 3:30, then there is a meet and greet and a cool down party between 5 and 6:30 at Hal and Mal's, and finally a big live music performance, a great big party at Hal and Mal's during the evening where most of the artists in the book are going to be playing. So look forward to that. It's great to have you here. A couple of quick comments about the book. Jacktown USA is published by Republic Books. My friend, Mr. Mike Frascona, senior partner of Frascona Law Firm, made that possible. And what we did with that book over a period of 18 months, Camille and I put our heads together, and what we want to get across, one of the big overarching themes, is the fact that Mississippi has won more Grammy Awards per artist across all genres than any other state in the union, since Grammys were given out beginning back in 1959. That's for nominations and Grammy Awards. And it's pretty miraculous that the state is able to accomplish that with a population of about 3 million. But Mike and Camille and I talked for a long time about something that also propels the city of Jackson. There is a storied history here in music. Whatever Mississippi has not done well over the years, we excel at the creative economy. Literature, film, music. It's amazing. And we've got some great talent on this panel and Camille's panel, and we thank you for being here. What we're going to do is have questions for each member of the panel up here. We'll do that on sort of a rotation basis, and then we will open the floor for questions. And when we get that far, any question you want to ask to any panelist up here is good, or you can direct your question toward everybody up here. But it'll be more of a conversation. Just enjoy it and have fun. And we will start down to my left with Mr. Dexter Allen. He's originally from Crystal Springs, Mississippi. Grew up in the church around gospel music, played and sang gospel for a number of years before moving into the blues. He's an accomplished guitarist and studio engineer. Won a Grammy for his participation in the Bobby Rush Grammy-winning album Saving My Love for You in 2024. And he is about as humble a guy as I've met in a long time. How about a warm welcome for Dexter Allen? All right, sir. We have, one of the first things you told me when we put together the chapter for your book was about you being 13 years old and getting what was a pretty sizable break. This wasn't something where you were discovered out in the middle of an America's Got Talent audience or anything like that, but this was a pretty unique situation for a 13-year-old, and it led to you being part of your dad's gospel quartet for a long time. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the things most musicians in the South all share is we started out in church, and like me, it started out in church, playing not just one instrument, all types of instruments, guitar, bass, keyboard, drums, whatever it needed to be. And one thing I remember is I had to learn how to play everything at least a little bit, because whoever didn't show up when I was younger, my dad would say, well, you got to sit in and fill in for him. So I wanted to make sure I at least knew how to play it. So around the age of 12, I had the opportunity to start playing bass guitar for my father's quartet gospel group. Kind of happened in a kind of crazy way. The bass player left, and I was sitting in the back room every Wednesday night when they rehearsed, and I would sit there and just kind of mimic what I heard. And my uncle came in, my Uncle Porter. He said, hey, you want to play bass for the group? I said, yeah. He said, well, come on in here and show them what you can do. And I came in there and I played it just like the bass player played it, because that's what I'd been practicing on. So that's where I started started playing, on the stage professionally, I guess you could say, at the age of 12.
What was it like once you were out with a proven quartet? You were 13. What was it like to get out in front of audiences for the first few times?
Wow. It was scary at first until I realized that I knew what I was doing, and I was just as good as the other guys that was doing it. So once I built my confidence up and knew that I knew what I was doing, it was just, hey, I was just in for the ride.
All right. Thank you, Dexter. Now, next to Dexter is Carmen Washington of the Group 4 Washington. If y'all have never heard Carmen and her sister Ariana and her brothers Carmen and Reginald harmonize, my gosh, you were in for a treat. And as an old guy that worked in what we think of as traditional media for a long time, I'm talking about radio, television, newspaper, and billboards, it was interesting to get to know the Washington family. And as best we could tell, Carmen, none of y'all songs have ever been played on the radio, at least when we talked, ever, which is mind-blowing for somebody who grew up in radio playing 45s and albums and such. But the Washington brothers and sisters have grown up in a very post-traditional media landscape. They are also from the Jackson area. They also were raised in the church. And you're going to learn as you get to know Carmen and her family that social media has been a tremendous, tremendous springboard for them. So please help me welcome to the panel Carmen Washington.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for those kind words. That's so kind. My name is Carmen again, and I'm so excited to be here. My siblings and I, we are 4 Washington, and I'm 1/4 of them. What would you all like to know?
Well, it's not uncommon for you and your siblings to burst into song. That's true for my friend Brian here. That's true for most everybody that sings, I guess. That's not true for me. You don't want me singing anywhere. But y'all were at a Chick-fil-A restaurant and burst into song. And the word super viral is something that's so applicable to 4 Washington. But put us in the scene, Carmen. Tell us about the evening at Chick-fil-A, why y'all happened to be there that evening, and how it went, and tell us about it going viral.
Okay, yes. So this was years ago, and around the time when we were all in high school, my sister had just got done with her basketball game. Like, y'all, when I tell y'all, we had our parents running wild. Every single one of us were doing some type of sport. My brother was doing powerlifting. I was doing like 5 sports in 1 year. But one thing that I love about my parents is that they never told us no. They always were telling us to do what you feel, do what you believe, and they wanted us to just follow our dreams. So even though I couldn't play basketball, my mama still said, you go try that. And we see where we are today. But we were at the basketball game, and everybody was really hungry, and it was pretty late in the night. So we were like, y'all, what are we going to do? We need something quick and convenient. So we decided to go to Chick-fil-A. I think we all can say we love Chick-fil-A. And the food, it's great quality for a very short time. And as we sat down, I think me personally that day, I don't think I had eaten anything. It was a very busy day. And that first bite of that sandwich, y'all, that first bite was just everything. And I just started freestyling into a song. That's how good it was. I just started freestyling. And I was like, Chick-fil-A, oh, Chick-fil-A. And my mom always had her phone ready because we were always singing around the house. So she loved to just catch those little moments on video. And one thing led to another. She posted it on Facebook, I think that following day. Nothing really happened of it. I think it probably had a few comments saying, oh my goodness, this is so funny. A year later, somebody reposted the video and it went crazy viral. I think it had over 1 million views in less than 2 weeks. Like, I said, oh my goodness, is everybody hungry? So we ended up getting an email from the Steve Harvey team. And at first, you get an email, you think it's spam, and we were like, no, this isn't for real. But y'all, God is so good, it was real. And one thing led to another. We all went out to Hollywood, got on the Steve Harvey show in 2019, met Steve himself, and Steve is a great guy. Very, very funny, as we know. And he was kind on and off camera. So it was a great experience. And who would have thought that a video of us freestyling about chicken would end us up on the Steve Harvey show? But it was a great experience.
Hey, my pleasure, right? All right, thank you, Carmen. All right, my friend Brian Johnson is also with us this morning. Now, Brian is, like Carmen, is 1/4 of For Washington. Brian is 1/4 of the Jacktown Sons. This group here brings the party. Great mix of Motown and rock and roll favorites. And I've learned so much in talking to them about how a grassroots level, beginning in a very small space, like a tiny little area off the band hall at Jackson State University, can lead to great things. Now, Brian and Juan and John and Larry, the Jacktown Sons, are all from the Jackson area. All met at Jackson State in the early 90s. They loved the choreographed dance moves of the Temptations and the harmonies of the group Boys to Men, if you remember them. All of them loved that group back in the day. They have played to enthusiastic crowds all over the country, and it's very important to them, like it is most everybody on this panel, to share what they learned from their forebears, the people who influenced them and helped them get their start in music, and get them to pay that forward to younger people. Please welcome Brian Johnson of the Jacktown Sons. First time I interviewed you guys, sitting in there, the first thing that came up was the Cotton Club. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a tremendous story, and I felt right away it would be a great lead-in to your chapter. This was a band trip. These guys were all members of the Jackson State University Choir. Went to Chicago. This is, I think, 1994 or 5. They're in a hotel room, and it dawned on them that the famed Cotton Club was right down the street. That closed back in 2008, but for 20 years or so, that was a legendary, very small venue, but a legendary music venue. And these guys broke a little protocol. Wait, it didn't just break protocol. You stamped all over protocol there. But tell us about the moment when you realized you were going to go. Tell us about what you encountered from like the talent show person in there, and tell us what ultimately happened when you performed.
All right, so I'm loud. So that night, when we first checked into the hotel, one of the other choir people came to us and said, hey, look, they talked to us about this Cotton Club. And so Juan, who's you'll see him a little bit later, he's the one that said, hey, man, we need to go down there to the Cotton Club. We need to get down there and perform. They need to see us. And Larry was the first one. He's like, are you sure about that? Because we're here on a choir trip. We're with the school. We're underage. We cannot go down to the Cotton Club. And Juan has always been that person. He's like the band, the group leader, and the instigator. So we had 2 and 1 going, and we all decided, okay, let's go down to the Cotton Club. Got down to the Cotton, snuck out that night. Castilla, who was the choir director, he made it a point to go around to each room and kind of check to make sure everybody was in the room for the night, and that we'd be ready for the next morning when we had to perform. So we waited until he went down to everybody's room. We even had some of the people in the choir help us out. They called and said, he just left my room. He's coming down to you guys' room. Just, you know what to do. Came down, guys, y'all in for the night. We're good. We were like, we started to yawn and, yeah, we're good. We're feeling good. Yeah, we're going to sleep. Soon as it was maybe 10 minutes after, we snuck out. Went down to the Cotton Club. We got there, and the guy at the door was like, you guys look a little young. And Juan was like, no, we're 25. So he was like, you sure? And we said, yeah. Yeah, okay, come on in. He took it on our word. We got in, they were having a talent show that night. Because we really just wanted to be able to go there and just, take in the scene. We were in a historical city with a historical venue. We just wanted to say we went there. All right, so we got in, and they were having a talent show. We were like, okay, let's get into the talent show. So Juan was like, you sure? Let's go ahead and sign up. Okay, let's sign up. Sign up for the talent show. They called us up. We had listened to few other people before. We were like, yeah, we'll get them. We'll get them. We'll get them too. We went through. They called us up and they said, well, where are you guys from? We said, Mississippi. Oh my God. You would have thought the heavens crashed. They said, you guys are down here at the Cotton Cup. They started throwing out this Southern accent, which was horrible, but they tried. This Southern accent. You guys are down here at the Cotton Cup. You come to pick cotton. You from Mississippi. We were like, we don't pick cotton down there in the morning. Where you get that? you didn't hear about Eli Whitney? We don't do that anymore. So anyway, he ragged us. He ragged us for about 5 minutes. You guys, y'all still do you wear shoes and things? Shoes on now. Come on, buddy. Let's get it done. And so he ragged us and ragged us. He said, you guys are going to try and perform something. We said, yeah, we'll do it. He said, do you want to incorporate the band? And we said, we don't need a band. He said, okay, go ahead. These guys from Mississippi Cotton Club, here they go. We sung a song from Boys to Men called Thank You. And it's kind of been like our traditional thing to do because it's our way of saying, thank you, Lord, for bringing us together, for keeping us going and keeping us, on an upward path. We did it. By the middle of the song, people were sitting there. They were sitting there. We thought they hated it. Got to the end, and we did our last bow, blah, blah, blah. People sat there for like about 10, 15 seconds. We was like, oh, crap. And John was like, you know where the exit is? Yeah, I see the exit sign back there. Let's get ready. And they just erupted. They stood up and started just clamoring and clapping. We could not believe it. John started crying because he's the emotional one. He's going to pretend that he's not, but I'm telling you guys right now, he is. He started crying because for us, it was a milestone, and we got a chance to represent where we were from. We got there. They thought just by looking at us and just knowing that we were from the South and from Mississippi, they already had put it in their minds, okay, if we're going to rag these guys, they're going to do horrible and we'll go on. But it was something that, it was confirmation for us. When you guys have been out, and I don't want to take too much more time out, but when you've been out, even if you're not an artist and you go into other places that are not from the South, that are not in the South, and they know you're from the South, well, they're gonna be apprehensive about what you can and can't do or what you bring to the table. And for us, it was confirmation. We were proud to say we were from Mississippi. We grew up here. We were raised here. We laughed. We cried here. And this talent came from this state. I can believe. And the guy said, hey, I'll never forget it. We had to get back in before it was time for checking because Stiller was checking the rooms at different times of the night. He said, you guys did wonderful. You want to come back next week? We said, nah, we're not going to be able to make it. We got to go back home to Mississippi and pick cotton. So, and we left and got back to the room. Of course, we got caught. And Stiller said, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we were like, okay, yeah. Tomorrow, and we were like, okay. And you know what he did? He put us on. He said, you guys are going to start doing our quartet stuff when we go to the venues from here on out for the rest of the trip. That was our punishment. We were like, okay, we'll try, but if you just really want us to do it, we'll go ahead and do it. And so, but it was great. That's really.
That had to be something that gave you guys so much confidence.
It did.
You had conquered Chicago then.
We did.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Brian. All right. Over here to your left, Benjamin Wright, and this is a resume that could take the rest of the time here. I think I can summarize it a little bit. Originally from Greenville, he is an accomplished musician and arranger, musical director. See if you recognize these names: Gladys Knight and the Pips, Aretha Franklin, Barry White and the Love Unlimited Orchestra, The Temptations, managing these groups. Musical director for them in the 70s. Moved out to Los Angeles in the 80s and won a slew of Grammys as an arranger working with the late Quincy Jones. Opened the Wrightsonian studio in 1987. A big career highlight came in 2004 when he conducted the Norwegian Radio Symphony at the Nobel Peace Prize concert in Oslo, Norway. And he has also won Grammys for helping Justin Timberlake and Outkast put together big Grammy-winning and huge selling albums as recently as the 2010s. And he and his bride Deborah were kind enough to fly here all the way from Los Angeles to be with us. Please welcome Benjamin Wright.
Purple.
All right, my friend, we're ready to get started here. Tell us about the first assignment from Quincy Jones. Put us in the moment where you got that call from him. He had you out to his house, and it led you to a moment where you were given an assignment with a hard deadline, a musical artist everybody in here will know, and you had to produce. Tell us about that.
First of all, thank you very much. And Aristotle. 4 songs of Guy John Arnold. Listen to the songs. I'm just repeating. What kind of shit is this? I'm like, hated all 4 songs. What? And man, what hits? Didn't like anything. Drove home, had a service party in my Rolls Royce. I get home, open the door, and the phone was ringing. Answer the phone. Hey, Benjamin Wright? Yes? It's Quincy Jones. Looked at the phone. Quincy who? Now, I knew everything about Quincy Jones. I go back to all of the jazz stuff. We had to say it 3 or 4 times. And I think he figured out I just didn't know. Well, it turned into wants to meet with me. Okay. Gave me an address to come to. I knew the address was set in front of UCLA. LA. Well, I knew that because I was practically new to LA. And one of the first things I did, I registered to LA. I know where I'm going. I've never been on that side of it. Okay. You know, I spent the time driving and looking. All right, this. Found a place. The lady invited me in. My name, oh, Benjamin. Okay. And it was Peggy Lipton. I knew Peggy Lipton from the television show Mod Squad. I must be in a hell of a place. You know, she said, hold on a second, I'll get Q for you. You? I don't know Q, I know Quincy Jones. Man, when you got Q, has this thing of making you feel very welcome. Hey man, what's up? Sir. Took me back in his part of the house, studio like, just talking and smack. Nothing about music. I'm scared. Finally he says, hey man, I'm doing Michael Jackson. People know Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5. And I knew him, I knew the Jackson because their father used to bring him a nightclub in Chicago. Okay. Kind of shaky. He gives you no information. Song. Got 30 days. Okay. Scared. I'm scared. For 25 of those days, I had written nothing. I didn't know what to write. I haven't been on this scene before. I could hear God talking, you better put some notes on the paper. Finally, I started writing, praying, and writing. Here come the session date. And Q had ordered about 40 string players. I'd never been in the environment 40 string. That's what's scared. Finally, time to get started. But there was an engineer there who recognized me, Bruce Swedeen. Oh, that's Q's engineer. That's also an engineer that I knew very well because I did a lot of stuff with Brunswick, Jack Wilson, all those. Hey, Ben. Hey, Q. Ben is here. Here. All the musicians assemble, time to hit. We hit. Q falling on his knees. I can see him in the control room. It's like, oh, I must really be messing up. He was ecstatic. Man, I'm just being a musician here. That's the shit. Okay? The song was, some of you guys have heard it. Michael Jackson. Don't stop till you get enough. Q had a heart. Man, this is it. Okay, calm me down a bit. Finish the song. And he says, I got another song for you. Okay. I'm feeling a little more at ease. Next song he gave me, some of you guys have heard it, called Rock With You. Well, I got an attitude. I killed it. I murdered it. So I was in. I was really in. Don't stop till you get enough and really open the door. But the Rock With You sent it to a whole nother planet. And then gave me another song that day. Hey man, I'm thinking about the money. We're gonna charge this cat. I'm gonna kill him. So my asking price grew overnight. Nothing to kill. Had all the money in the world. I killed that. That was not my start in LA because I had done several artists. Several. But that was like Jones said, Jones is the man. So it opened the door.
Benjamin, you may totally disagree with this. Q had a huge reputation.
Yeah.
He was a giant beginning in the late 50s and early 60s.
I
would argue that his collaboration with you and the flood of huge crossover hit singles that dominated radio in the 80s. That didn't put him on the map. He was already on the map, but I would say that gave him a second act, if you will, that carried him long.
Well, okay, I see first on you there. And some of us are old enough to remember, it's my party and I cry when I want to. That's Quincy Jones. Most people don't remember that part of it. But that was it. He was cutting hits a long time ago. So it just opened the door for me. I got extremely busy. Immensely busy. Built my own studio. Got an attitude. And I'm charging like crazy. Yeah. All right. That's the cat, Benjamin Wright. That's the cat.
All right.
Made a lot of money.
Thank you, Benjamin. All right, next door to Benjamin over here is Rashad McGill. You know him as the Blues Kid. He's originally from Laurel, Mississippi. Grew up in the Pine Belt. Wouldn't surprise you to know that he played football in high school. Went to Jackson State University and has been around Jackson a lot in his life. He's soaked up the Jackson musical culture and the musical culture coming from Jackson State University. He was inducted into the Alabama Blues Hall of Fame in '24. He received an honorary membership ring from the Ground Zero Blues Club in Biloxi in '23. And he got very close to winning the coveted International Blues Competition in '25, finishing as a runner-up. And he's a good guy, and he is very, very supportive of the Pine Belt. Please welcome Rashad, the Blues Kid. Rashad, the first thing and the last thing we talked about, I think, were you wanting to make sure the Pine Belt got its due as a part of the Mississippi musical landscape,
yes.
You know, the Delta and the Jackson area and the Hill Country. But tell us what you learned as you grew up about the blues and all sorts of what we think of as the musical gumbo coming out of the Pine Belt and why it's important to you.
Well, first, it's very important to me because a lot of times the Pine Belt area is kind of skipped over. You start north Memphis and, you know, the Hill Country Blues and Malaco, and you kind of branch off to either Mobile or New Orleans and get that jazz feel, and the rest of the state is kind of left empty. So I took all of that, and actually this whole panel just about, I grew up watching Dexter and Chad, and I caught those guys. Composition actually did a welcoming for the freshmen in 2007 for my freshman class at Jackson State. So I'm very familiar with everybody. So when I got the call, it was welcome wholeheartedly. You know, hey, I'm amongst everybody that I watch and grow up with, and that kind of just added fuel to my fire. And then, you know, meeting Mr. Frascona, where, you know, he has this saying that if you're not from Mississippi, I'm just sorry for you. You know, I'm just and that's one of my sayings now. Wherever I go, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry you're not from where I'm from. You know, maybe you're from somewhere else. But putting all of that together from a church background and using harmonies and all of that type of stuff to really say, hey, this is the sound of the Pine Belt, and that sound is what we're trying to put out in stamp. So, you know, when you guys read in the next 100 years, what is Pine Belt Blues, and Rashad the Blues Kid would definitely play a huge part in putting that history out there for people to have.
All right. Well, Rashad, thank you for getting that part of the state out to where all of us can appreciate it. No, I mean that. There is so much talent that migrated to Mississippi, and so much homegrown talent, and it's wonderful to get some of the parts of the state. Lots of love. All right, last but not least, my buddy Chad Wesley, originally from Scott County, Mississippi. This guy was not born with a guitar in hand when he came out of the womb, but it was close. He comes from a family of musicians, got his start very early, and he has won a whole slew of Jackson Music Awards and Josie Music Awards, which are handed out in Nashville, Tennessee each year. He absolutely loves Jackson and the musical landscape from the city. Please welcome Chad Wesley. You know, there were so many poignant things you and I talked about out at your recording studio. We talked twice, but I remember going home and sort of replaying our interview in my head and thinking, there's a lot of stuff I could start your chapter with. But this is, right in the middle. And as I was thinking about it in the last few days, this is a remarkably poignant moment. You talked, Chad, about one day as you were growing up, and by the time you were driving at age 16, you'd hop from Scott County over to Jackson. You were playing open mic nights at different places around the city, getting into George Street Grocery. But you dreamed of playing at the Mississippi Coliseum to the degree that you sort of saw it rolling out in your head. You described what you thought it would feel like, approaching the venue, getting on stage and living in the moment. Tell us what happened as you approached in real life for your first big gig at the Coliseum, then tell us who you opened for, and then tell us about totally pissing off the promoter at the end of the show.
So growing up as a Mississippi musician, I, of course, was influenced by national and international artists, and yeah, you do dream of LA, you dream of New York, but for some reason I always had such a heart for Mississippi, because to me, every watermark that I could ever reach for was from Mississippi, from Jimmy Rogers to Robert Johnson to Elvis Presley and so many others. So to me, the Mississippi Coliseum represented just this kingdom of the capital city where all of the best entertainment had occurred throughout my life. I saw my first major concert there, Garth Brooks, and it really fired me up as a young 10-year-old, and I was like, one day I'll be on that stage. And I set that goal for myself at a very, very young age. As I would go to Jackson with my parents growing up, and we would ride over I-55, I would look at that time, yellow and red circus tent of a building that eventually became remodeled and modernized. But I would think about that moment, and I would think about what would the day be like if I ever got to play there, and what would the air feel like? What would the sky look like? And you set these things in your mind when you set a goal for yourself, and it's almost like a fairy tale vision. Well, fast forward way into my career, after a multitude of growth and accomplishments, I had actually, a friend of mine had an opportunity to play there and couldn't do the show. And he called me and said, hey, this promoter is asking me if you would be able to do this spot for me instead. And we joke about it to this day that he lost that grand opportunity. He said, honestly, I think you're more right for it anyway. I said, well, what's the show? He said, playing at the Mississippi Coliseum opening for George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. I was like, well, let's go. I called my band. I was like, if y'all aren't available, I'll find another band. Nothing's stopping this opportunity. So sure enough, that day, we went for sound check, and then I went home, put on my zoot suit, as I've always called it, the clothes you wear on stage. And sure enough, my manager at the time and my wife and I, we loaded into the car. I was like, can I just sit in the back seat? And they're like, you don't want to sit in the front with the air conditioner? I was like, no, I want to sit in the back seat. I want to feel like that kid sitting in the back seat with his parents. But this time, I'm the one riding the play at that Coliseum. And sure enough, that sky and that air it felt and looked as I'd always dreamed it would. And then I got on that stage, thousands of people out in the crowd, and we kicked off the show. And we had an allotted amount of time as an opener. But it got there to the end, and I was like, you know, I've always been a I could die tomorrow type person, so live in the moment. So I took that opportunity to close out the show with a rendition of Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. And I probably played that song for a solid 14 minutes, making Freebird sound like Happy Birthday. I just soloed until my heart was literally bleeding out of my chest, and the promoter was frantic on the side. Their people were going crazy, get him off stage, the promoter screaming at me, motioning, all but ready to fight me physically. And then I closed out, I slammed it out, closed the show, I slung my guitar down, did some real Jimi Hendrix type stuff, and then I took a huge bow, roaring standing ovation. And that was my moment, and that moment I had achieved up until that point. I went backstage, and after getting blessed out by the promoter, which I gave no cares about because I had just did what I had set to do, I had the opportunity to go into Mr. Clinton's dressing room and sit down with him, and he told me that he made them, halfway through my set, open that door so he could hear what he felt the rhythm of. And he said as soon as that door opened, he heard a sound of a guitar that he had not heard since Jimi Hendrix, and a feeling and an emotion. And his guitar player just reaffirmed that. And that was a real, true, not a made it moment. I don't think there's really a such thing as a I made it moment, but like what he spoke about, a moment where it's been affirmed that the mission you're on and the path that God has laid before you is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
You were how old then, Chad? 20, 21?
I was 26 years old.
Yeah. So this is
2014.
14.
2014.
That was obviously a huge boost. I'm sure as you walked back out to the car, you were about 7 feet tall and still trying to take in the moment.
And bulletproof.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Chad. All right. We'd like to. All right. We'd like to take some questions. Anything y'all would like to ask of any panelist up here is fair game. And go ahead. We'll show of hands. And yes, sir. Benjamin, let me get you to start with that. I know you recorded in Chicago in the 70s, but where in Mississippi back in the 50s and 60s do you remember music being recorded?
Hey man, you're not respecting me. I was a kid. When I finally came to studio, Jackson, Mississippi. One of the engineers, Wolf.
That's Wolf Stevenson of Malaco.
Yeah, Malaco. I didn't like the place. Now I've played all of the major studios throughout, and I got a multi-million studio at home. I come in this studio, it's like, what is this?
Malaco was a startup studio, if you're not familiar with it. That was late 60s, and Mr. Frascona and his brother Greg were doing the same thing in Mississippi State and different parts of Mississippi in terms of getting bands booked at fraternity and sorority houses, as were Wolf Stevenson and Tommy Couch Sr. Now, Tommy Couch Sr. formed Malaco in the late 60s. He and Wolf were pharmacy majors at Ole Miss, but were booking bands as far away as Muscle Shoals back in the mid-60s. But Malaco became its own independent label in 1978. but they had a studio in West Jackson as early as '69. And Mike, is there anything you want to add about studios pre-Malico in Jackson? One thing you'll enjoy as you read the book, the introduction chapter really sets the scene for the late 60s in the Jackson area. Juke joints and clubs all over the south side of the city and the west side of the city, and radio, Joe Lewis on WOKJ and David Adcock on WZZQ, playing Jackson artists on the radio in Jackson, Mississippi. It was a much different time back then, but a great opportunity for music lovers from that era. So good question. Another question, you, for me or for any of the panelists, or if you'd like the input of 3 or 4 folks up here, ask something like that too.
I want to say something. First time I did a big performance or whatever, Jackson, Mississippi, a big band. My first time to perform in Jackson. You know, I'm just a conductor. And I think a lot of cats in the band be with my credits. Credits were long already. We're paying attention. And then there was this little guy that was just watching me. And then he's just watching. Turned out that was Mike. He just watched me. He said nothing until we finished the rehearsal. Then he made the introduction. And praise God he did, because we've been buddies ever since. Ever since. You know, my wife even knows his voice. Mike is on the phone. Okay, fine. I know who Mike is. But that was great for me. Because he was the guy that was just paying attention. He didn't look to the right, he just looked at me through my whole rehearsal with an orchestra. This cat. But I loved him. And I met the man. We've been buddies for a long time. He's much older than I am. No, but that was a great introduction.
You know, the name Bobby Rush comes up throughout the book. And Dexter, let me get a couple of comments from you about Bobby. A mentor to you, you call him Pops. Tell the audience what you've learned from Bobby about forging out your own identity as a bluesman and how to carry yourself.
Well, oddly enough, for that question, I'd have to add Mr. Wright in on that as well. I learned a lot of things being on the road and traveling across the world with Bobby Rush. I learned a lot of things to do, and I also learned a lot of things not to do. I first met Ben, I don't know, over 20-some years ago out in Reno. He was MDing for Gladys Knight, I think, on that gig. And I didn't know who he was. I had never even heard of his name, but I knew all the music that he had been involved in. And Bobby introduced me to him, and I could tell they were real good friends because they started talking about all kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, this guy must be somebody. So I was standing there talking to him, and he was like, yeah, man, I like your rhythm on the guitar and whatever. I'm like, okay. And his phone rang, and he said, hold on a minute. And he was talking to somebody, And whoever it was, they were saying, hey, I need you to do this music. And he was like, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. I've been busy, whatever. And when he got off the phone, he said, yeah, that was Mary J. Blige. I got to trying to do some stuff for her. And I said, hey, I got to know who this guy is right here. And I sent him my very first record. And I called him. I said, Mr. Wright, I'm going to send you my record. He said, yeah, send it. I want to listen to it. So I sent it to him. And I called him. I was waiting on him to call me. He didn't call me. I said, well, it must have been bad. He didn't call. So I said, well, I'm going to give him a call. So I called him. I said, Mr. Wright, this is Dexter, guitars with Bobby Rush. He said, yeah, I remember you. I said, did you get my record? He said, yeah, I listened to it. He said, man, I didn't know you could sing like that. I said, yes, sir, I sing, He said, yeah. He said, and your playing is good. I said, yeah. I said, I appreciate it. I said, so what you think about the record? He said, well, do you want me to tell you the truth or you want me to bull crap you? I said, I want you to tell me the truth. He said, well, it's good. He said, it's good. He said, but that's all it is. It's just good. He said, there's a lot of good records down in Mississippi. He said, but you need to be good and different. You got to find your own thing. He said, you got to find your own identity. He said, I don't know how to help you do that. He said, maybe through instrumentation, through different styles or whatever. He said, but don't just be good. Be the best at who you are. And that's what started me to creating who I am today.
All right, Brian, question for you here. You talked about flying out to Las Vegas. First time y'all played. Put us in the moment there. Las Vegas is out in the desert for anybody who doesn't know. You're looking out the window, and there are the lights of Las Vegas. You had a pretty poignant reaction to that. Tell us about that.
So this is my second time ever flying in life. And I woke up at, I think it was maybe 10, 11 that night. I woke up when I heard the pilot come over and said, okay, we're going to be landing soon. I'm going to kind of take a dip around, and so you guys can see Vegas. If you've never been here, welcome. And so I said, I happen to be sitting by a window seat. And up until that point, I've never wanted to sit by a window seat because I don't particularly love to be high. So he made the turn, and it was pitch black. I remember that. And just all of a sudden, when he made this turn, I just saw this, it's like a bowl sitting in the middle of nowhere and all these lights. And I thought, this is like heaven. But it looks like I'm looking for streets of gold. Just it felt that way. I've never been to Vegas. And when he made that turn and I saw that city, I thought this is one of the moments. You look back on times when there are certain moments that shape you as a person. And it doesn't have to be if you're a musician or whatever you may be into. They're just moments. And that moment when he turned that plane and I saw that city, I thought, this is it. This is why I used to sit on the table in the juke joint with my grandmother and listening to Sam Cooke records. This moment right here, this is one of those moments that just, I'm trying to describe it, but I really do not have the words. If you know you have a dream and you see part of something in life that confirms that dream for you, it's a feeling, it's really hard to describe. And it did. It felt that way. I'll never forget it, and I'll always cherish it, but it'll always be something that there's a lightning bolt hit me and just went down my spine, and I said, this is it. God, I don't know what's going to happen after this moment, but I appreciate you letting me have this moment. It was.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I do a lot of interviewing, and I'll say, give me a moment going back over your career where you looked around maybe nothing was happening in the moment, but something hit you and you thought, this is why God put me here. This is why what I do. That's how that story, when you shared it with me, struck me. Way up in the air, you may or may not have had an adult beverage on the plane. You may or may not have had an adult beverage listening to Sam Cooke records when you were about that tall long ago. Thank you, Brian. All right, we've got just a couple of minutes here. Yes, ma'am, Brianna. All right, we got to go quick. Chad, go.
My goal going forward is to make sure that there is an industry here in Mississippi in the future for the next generation of artists to keep alive what makes Mississippi great.
Rashad, go.
Like what Chad said, I totally agree. And to have those artists like Dexter Allen, where I'm not so much connected with Bobby Rush, but Dexter and Eddie Cotton and those older guys that reach back and actually talk to the younger ones, that is my Bobby Rush. Like, that is my Bobby playing. So to have those guys to coach us along and give us that hard love, teaches me to reach back and do the same.
Benjamin, quickly, what are you most proud of as you survey the musical landscape in Mississippi today?
Well, listen to these two guys. The kids, to me, I'm old as dirt. Possibly older than everybody in this room. I turn 80 next birthday. I'm a real senior citizen, what can I tell you? So I understand what these guys are saying. I've been there a long time ago, and I applaud them. I love their stories, the whole bit. This is great for me.
Well, we're glad you're here, sir. All right, Brian.
Wait, Dexter.
Go.
I've known Dexter when he was crawling.
Even before he picked up that bass player, bass
Yeah.
at 13. Brian, very quickly.
For me, it's just to make sure that the new artists that are coming up remember where their roots are, to connect with anything from soul music to blues to gospel that originated from here, and that will help you to find your way as a musician in the next era. That's important.
All right, Carmen, very quickly, same question.
For me, I'd say my goal is to be an example for women like me or even men, to just know that if you stick to your dream, if you stick to your goals, it's possible. Even if it hasn't happened yet, as long as you have that vision in your sight and as long as you believe in yourself first, it's good if other people believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself more. So as long as you stay true to who you are, have great morals, and be a great person, I believe that everything will come your way as long as you keep God first.
All right, Dexter, very quickly, you.
I'm going to say just keep creating quality music. Quality is the key. In the world that we live in today, everything is fast and so forth and so on. So just keep creating quality music.
All right, thank you all so much.